Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. Welcome to our YouTube channel. This is Create with Franz, talking today about ADHD and how hyperactivity is not a life sentence. What are we going to do? We're going to learn all about it, because I know nothing about it, from Dr. McReynolds, who is Connie McReynolds, and she's based in California. Bless your heart, Connie. Welcome to the show. So happy to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
It's my pleasure. And just tell us a little bit what you do, and then we'll see how you are the expert about this, because you guys, today we want to talk to you about the hope you have after you have this condition diagnosed, maybe by a friend. So that's not a diagnosis, maybe by a professional, something better, maybe by a teacher, who knows? But doesn't mean you're going to think and be on pills for the whole day, for the rest of your life. What's the root cause of this? There are symptoms, there are causes, there are root causes, there are solutions. So why, Dr. Reynolds, why are you the best person to tell us about this?
Well, thank you again for having me here. So my career goes back 35 years in psychology and rehabilitation counseling. And then fast forwarding to the last 15, I actually have uncovered what I call the root cause of ADHD and a lot of learning disabilities, conditions, challenges, behaviors in children and adults. So the key here is really unraveling that. The name of the book is Solving the ADHD Riddle, and it's really the seminal piece of the work that captured all of this activity that we've been doing in my clinics for the past 15 years. And I'm just excited to share this with your audience.
I have to say I'm more excited because it seems that everyone has it. It's just like an infectious disease. Why are we all ADHD? You go to school, and I remember watching this guy on TED Talk, and so I can't remember, Sir somebody, I can't remember his name, but he was a Cambridge academic, and he was talking about, is this true that we have ADHD, or is actually getting a student stuck doing clerical work for 7 hours and expecting them to be still for all these 7 hours without using the energy? And it was very interesting. He died very recently, but his TED Talks really stuck to me, thinking perhaps we're approaching the problem from the wrong end. And you were telling me, Connie, that this problem can actually arise, not because we are born like this, but because some trauma, some emotional important events have happened. So you've done so much research, and you have studied young adults and even middle-aged people have it, and you've done studies and conferences and everything. I'm just so interested in knowing what happens when you realize that you have this attention disorder. What's the big problem? Is it something here in the brain? Is it a soul problem? Is it a somatic problem? Is it a pesticide? I mean, we read so much rubbish about it. We don't know anymore what to believe.
Well, and there is an awful lot of information. There's an awful lot of misinformation as well, as we know. It's kind of hard to sort through it all. So that's really what we've been doing for 15 years, is kind of sorting through. And we base all of this on evidence-based data. So we're hardcore data when it comes to the conclusions that I've drawn. And it honestly took me about 5 years of doing this work before I really felt so solidly grounded in this that I began writing about it and publishing international journals and such. And so really what I call this is the root cause of a lot of diagnostic conditions. So children and adults both come to the clinics struggling in some manner. People show up because they're struggling. They don't know quite what's wrong, but they know something's off. Most of the time they're going to default to, I must not be smart enough, and that could not be further from the truth. So we have to dispel a lot of the internal myths along the way of what people have written as a narrative in their own mind about their struggles, what parents have written as this is a willful bad behavior. This is a child we just can't contain. We don't know what to do. He or she won't follow along. I hear it all day long. And when we are able to get underneath that, so we have an assessment that I've been using for this entire 15 years. I've seen thousands of these assessments. And what we're able to do is dial in, and people just are in disbelief of this. We get this in 20 minutes of a computer-based assessment. that we look at 37 areas of auditory and visual processing, and regardless of kind of where the person has come from, whether it's possibly from birth, it could be from trauma, it could just be the child's brain is getting overwhelmed in school for good reason. The adult could be struggling at work. I've worked with adults that have lost jobs, that once we get underneath all of that, guess what? There's something else going on. And when we find that root cause, it makes all the difference in the world.
So even an adult losing their job. So ADHD then is not something stuck like cement. It's more like a neuroplasticity issue because it changes and how our neurology works, how we connect things, and how we make sense of this. I'm really curious. So can you say you can cure this or you can give a management system?
Well, I always stay away from the word cure because that carries such a strange, connotation to it. What I say is there may not be anything that needs to be cured. You may just need to understand how your brain works. And once you have a clear understanding of that, you play to your strengths and you support the areas of weakness. Now, I've carved out that assessment piece for people so that they can learn what this is again within 2 hours. There are people who want to go on, and then they do the neurofeedback, which is what we're kind of known for here in Southern California and really kind of in other places, is that we work with the brain. And what this really is based in is this concept of neuroplasticity. And what that means is the brain changes through repetition. And if we think about how we've learned everything we've learned how to do, from walking, talking, driving a car, the only way we've learned it is by practice. And so you practice. And that's what this is. It's kind of a gym for your brain when we do the neurofeedback. And so your brain gets to practice like a gym routine. It's a training routine. And we then are able to wire in, so to speak, the changes in those weaker neuronal pathways. And it's just training. It's just putting your brain through the practice. And then after a certain period of time, everyone's different on that, the changes tend to hold. And on the front end of that, though, this assessment is going to help people. It doesn't matter where they're sitting. I don't diagnose because I don't see any value in it. I came from the field of rehabilitation counseling where you get a diagnosis and that tells you, okay, that gets you in the front door. It doesn't tell you anything about the person. And so what we do is really dial in on what is the person really needing in the way of the supports, the structure, the understanding, whatever that might be, that can help them move forward in their life. It's really about giving people hope so that they know that this isn't a life sentence. None of this is a life sentence.
Right.
And there is a way forward, and we can help you get there. And we have. We've worked with so many people in this area and around that have different lives now. We change the trajectory of children's school experience. I sit in on IEP meetings over here, which are these independent educational plans, which means they're looking for support to try and help a student. And many times the school, they have assessments, they kind of get it, but they kind of don't get it. And then they still don't know what to do. And so if the parents have come to me and we've done these assessments, I can boil it down to a one-page document. We can highlight the auditory problems, the visual problems, and then I give these teams and parents and teachers 3 steps. This is what you do for this particular weakness. Do this for this one. And recently an IEP team leader said, oh my gosh, we can take this into the classroom this afternoon and start helping this child today. And it's like, yes, if you just know what you're dealing with, that's all that matters. And no one knows what they're dealing with until you get to the bottom, the root cause of it.
Well, do you know what I love? I love that you are patterned a little bit like Create with Franz, the show, because my show is divided in issue, solution, tips. I want people to go home saying, I can do this. And now you're giving us just a pattern there, because you're not just throwing pills at people or injection or surgery. Oh, that's it. You go this for life. You are doomed. You actually say, hey, what's the problem here? What's actually going on? So you're interested in the truth, not in misinformation or, there are people, they will send their child to a homeopath and to anything. But what's the root cause for this? Stop throwing medicine and start working out what is misfiring here, what is not working in the same way as everyone else, and why are we supposed to be all the same? Some people are faster, some are slower, some have 30 interests, some have one interest. That doesn't mean if I have one interest, they must be autistic. And if I have 30, they don't have to be ADHD. But the fact that you can, whatever this label that we love so much, because we love identifying with neurodivergence, I'm different, I'm special. Yeah. But you're just going down there and say, you know what? You can do something today. I just love that. 3 steps. Are you going to be able to share something with us? Maybe you have a story with somebody that had an issue and was able to overcome at least some of it?
Absolutely. So there were probably so many stories that I could share. So the one that comes to mind was earlier on. One of my colleagues called me one day and he said, "We need to come see you. My son is in so much trouble." He was 15. He was in high school. And I said, "What's happened?" And he said, "Well," he said, "he's been getting in a lot of fights. He's very angry. We're having a lot of struggle with him. We're really concerned about his mental health. We don't know what to do. We can't contain him. And he just got expelled from school." And I said, "Well, what happened?" And this boy had been in special education over here. This is for children who struggle, who have trouble learning. And so he had been channeled through the special education program for the entire time of his academic career. He's now in high school. And he was sitting in a study class in the library and was incredibly bored that day. And he decided that he really didn't like a grade that he'd received in one of his classes, so he hacked the school's computer system and changed his grade and got expelled. And this was the first inclination that anyone had as to how bright this young man was. And so in he came. Literally, the dad had a hold of his collar, bringing him into the clinic to get him in. And we did our assessment, and yes, there were auditory and visual processing problems. There were areas he could do well in, but he was failing in math. He was just bombing out in school. And when we looked at kind of that learning profile, it was like, oh my gosh, this kid can't hang on to anything that's being said to him. So his auditory processing was incredibly weak, and that actually was working to his deficit because he couldn't process or comprehend, not because of intelligence, but because it wasn't firing correctly. Information was not landing. So it didn't matter what anyone told him. It would go in and fall out, so to speak. So he could not hang on to what people were saying to him. And then he would have this massive frustration and anger that would come out because he couldn't tell anyone what was wrong. And he thought he was dumb, in his words. And yet he was brilliant. And so sitting there figuring out how to hack the school's computer database on his little laptop, I mean, that's pretty smart thinking from our end of the spectrum over here. So for the neurofeedback, he came in. So his dad brought him in, and we did about 20 hours of brain training with him. And he was admitted to another school the next year. And in that new school, he scored the highest on math in that school's history on the state exam the next year, documenting clearly this young man had been misclassified, misdirected the entire time because he couldn't demonstrate in the classroom what he's capable of doing. And that led to so much anger, so much frustration. He couldn't follow along. Peers, bullying, anger, all of that surfaced with him. And this is one of hundreds of stories like this of children and adults who are struggling. And that's the seriousness of this, because this has real life implications. And people will get a diagnosis and think it's an answer. And it's like, it isn't an answer because it does not actually give you a pathway forward. It gives you a label. But the key here is, what are you going to do now? And we're the ones you call. It's kind of like the whole Ghostbusters movie thing. Who are you going to call? It's like, after you get the diagnosis, give us a call because we're going to help unravel all of that for you and make it manageable and understandable so that you know really where your strengths are, and then what do you do to shore up those areas of weakness so you're not struggling like this. We want to get rid of the struggle.
Yes, I think that's a big thing. I kind of understand because we had in our family a similar situation with a close relative, let's say. I won't go deeper in that. And the total misunderstanding of what the character is of one person because they cannot cope with certain things. Like, for example, I don't like lists. You can give me any instruction list of any sort. I can't remember. When you're on the third line, I forgot the first. Just gone. Because it's just all these words. And yet I got 40 diplomas and degrees here and there, qualifications of all sorts. I memorized entire books for university. I done, BS in architecture and design and done lots of stuff. Disney coming, graduate, everything. But if you give me a list of things and I have to remember the list or nothing. Music theory, I've been doing music since I was 4. I'm 61. Theory just goes through me and out of me, and I just cannot get it. Just a wall. You can be speaking Persian. It's the same thing to me. I just don't get it. And yet I got really good IQ there. Very good. But when I was in my class, my teacher, music teacher said, you're going to be a concert pianist. At 4, she told me, you're going to be a concert pianist. But the theory, I was like, I can't get this. Just cannot get it.
Exactly. And this is the challenge, is that people can have these skill sets, and then there can be these little areas that are kind of like Swiss cheese, is what I describe to a lot of parents. It's like if you think about a piece of Swiss cheese and you put all the processing capabilities for auditory and visual kind of horizontal on a piece of Swiss cheese, what you're going to see is there's places where there's cheese and there's places where there's a hole. And sometimes it doesn't make any sense because you think, well, if he or she can do this, then why can't they do this? It's like, well, then why can't they do this is where kind of the theoretical hole is, which means that processing piece right there, that task that's required for that right there is part of what isn't working strongly enough to be able to carry that child or an adult forward.
Amazing. I hope you have some book somewhere that talks about this so people can just buy the book and learn.
Can buy the Solving the ADHD Riddle. So when I wrote that, I actually wrote it for teachers and for parents to be able to understand what all of this is. And I go into a lot of detail about the differences between auditory processing and visual processing. Most people can really kind of track on what the auditory processing is because people forget. They can't remember a list. Then people talk to them and my memory skips. Visual processing is a little harder because we don't really focus on understanding that very well. So this is the kid whose backpack is a mess, who can't organize anything, maybe loses everything. And then processing the visual information, maybe they look at things and it just doesn't make sense. But if you talk it through with them, maybe they have better auditory processing, they can get it. But there's a real difference here, and I go into a lot of those details. Each chapter, it's a chapter on auditory, a chapter on visual, and it has case studies in there with the data set that goes with those case studies. And that makes all the difference. Is once people can really understand what this is, then you can work with it better. You're not guessing.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it must be frustrating that inside yourself you want to achieve something, and then society has put you into a little black hole or a little box. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Maybe even in a test, because psychological tests were all based on maths for some reason, abstract thinking. You can't pass it, or I must be stupid. Because we standardize, don't we? I was a teacher for 15 years, and we standardize. We had to assess, we had to put marks, but not everyone fits in there. I always give this example because I've been a homeschooling mom for years of this tree, a luscious green tree. And there are 10 animals in front of it. There's a fish, there's a monkey, there's an elephant. They're all put there, and there's the assessor there. Say, well, for your test, you have to climb onto the tree. And the bird just goes there, but elephant can just crush the tree, and the fish can't go to the tree, but the fish is not supposed to go to the tree. It makes you feel so frustrated. So maybe some more understanding can help while we read these books. We maybe, if you have courses, read, understand, and maybe a lot of us have some occasional ADHD. Is it something possible?
Yes, actually. Well, in today's world, I mean, we know that our distractibility is so significant in today's world. And I actually just wrote something recently about this, where this distraction quotient that we're now dealing with, that's really come on hard in the last 10 years, last 20 overall, has caused brains to not be able to focus as well because we're in this constant state of distraction. And that's part of the strategies that get included into this report. When you do this assessment, you get this report. And if there are certain areas of visual processing that are weak, the key here is get rid of the distractions, auditorily or visually, because your brain can't hang on to multiple points of information that are coming at you. It gets overwhelmed. So you kind of think of it as a storage unit. Some people have a smaller unit. Some people have a larger unit. It has nothing to do with your intelligence, but it has to do with the capacity or the amount of information your brain can process, because there's processing speed. And this is so important for parents particularly to understand, is that if processing speed is slower, these are the kiddos, at least here in the US, that are going to be labeled as slow, meaning there's a cognitive delay or an intellectual challenge of some sort, when in fact that absolutely may not be the case at all. It could just simply be that this particular brain lags in being able to keep up with the speed of which information is being delivered, so it's not landing. All this child needs is a different way of the information being delivered in order for it to land. So it isn't about intelligence, but I just wonder how many thousands and maybe tens or hundreds of thousands of children are channeled into these special programs that really aren't being tailored to what they really need. Kind of like our young man who was in special ed but was a genius of his own right. And so how many children, because they have a drag or a disconnect or it's not landing right, then are automatically kind of pushed over into these programs that when we look at the outcomes are not there. So that tells us that there's a mismatch. So we may have a series of symptoms and then we have some interventions, but if those are not lining up properly, the outcomes aren't going to manifest. It just is not possible for it.
Yes, also because I gather, because it takes so many years to do research, all the papers and peer reviewed and blind placebo trial, is so much stuff. So if you imagine you do your teacher training, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, now you're applying all your principles, exactly right. But meanwhile, science has gone forward and has found out new stuff, and you're still stuck to the method. I learned this in the 80s, so that's fine. I mean, just watching Huberman Lab when they talk about new stuff all the time, and I think, wow, we've gone so much forward. Think about now gut flora. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I became a herbalist, if I talked about gut dysbiosis and gut flora, everybody was, what the heck are you going on? Now everyone is talking about it because it's become mainstream. Gut flora is behind autoimmune disease, ADHD, autism, lots of issues, and Hashimoto and MS. And so, wow, now everybody knows about it. But before, if you look for what's the thing for allergies? Oh, just stop eating the thing, just stop being exposed. That's not a cure, just avoidance. So I'm glad that you have a latest research, and I'm gonna have to ask you, can people go to your website and do this test online, or do they have to sign up? Is it a free test or is it a paid test? How does it work? I think lots of people will be just flocking to your website now.
So there are two websites. There's one under my name, ConnieMcReynolds.com, which talks about the neurofeedback. And there is actually a free self-assessment up there, so you can take it for yourself or for your children. It's going to point you, the whole idea of that is to kind of help you figure out, are you dealing with auditory processing? Are you dealing with visual? Do you have a combination of that? And I think on the Clarity Essential website, that's also linked there, you can do the same assessment on that one as well. Both are designed to help get you in the ballpark so you have some sense of, what am I dealing with here? I don't really know. And then if you want to really get the formalized assessment, you just contact me through the contact form and schedule a 20-minute free consultation. So we can do it through Zoom, we can do it through a phone, and I'll ask you a series of questions. You can kind of share with me whatever you're comfortable doing, and then we can get you booked in for the 2-hour process. So it's an hour of computer-based assessments, and then when we're done at the end of the 2 hours, you walk away with a report that identifies all your strengths, all your weaknesses, and has strategies across the board. They're in age-appropriate categories, and it's based on percentile rankings from 1 to 99. So I've also categorized those across 5 structured areas. So, and it's color-coded from green to red. So the green is all good. You've got 2 layers of green, some gold, and when we hit orange and red, it's like this is the red zone. It's not the football zone. This is this is the zone of, okay, this target this, because this is where things are breaking down for your child or for you. And so this is where you really want to start paying attention to the strategies that are in there. And then if you decide you want to do the neurofeedback, then that's it's another process, but you've already done the assessment. So you can actually we target that. So we use that assessment to then develop the brain training program. So people do that, and we usually do about 20 hours of that. So at the end of that, people typically, because we're evidence-based, we're always measuring, we're always assessing, we're determining progress toward the goals. And then, when you get to your goals, and that's typically hardwired in. So I always equate it to like when you were a child learning how to ride a bike. You can ride a bike when you're a kid, learn how to do it, and not ride a bike for 20 or 30 or more years, and you can still get back on that bike and you can still ride it because your brain holds that pattern. It's been, repeatedly introduced into the brain, so it's hardwired in. And that's what this does. It's just hardwire in your changes, and you're good to go then.
Amazing. I love it. I was reading a biography of sort in a post on LinkedIn of this guy who is now a plurimillionaire CEO, blah, blah, blah. And he was saying my mom was very clever. She realized I had hyperactivity. And what would work with me was she would not make me sit and do study. She would make me run and use up all my physical energy completely. And after done the sports and the shouting, the yelling, the jumping, then we would start doing the work in small bits. And here I am today with a massive company. I can't remember his name. He's quite young now, 30, 40. Hugely successful. And why? Because ADHD became what enabled him to run 3 to 4 large companies together. He's got the energy for that. But he's now channeling the energy in the right place. And I always think the school system, as good as it is, with noble intents, is trying to make everyone do the same thing when we're actually different people with a different composition, genetics, environment, home environment, also our diets. I'm quite sure that makes a huge difference. You can't just give processed food the whole day. High E122, E24, which are forbidden in Europe, here they're everywhere. And all these drugs, they make you really stimulated. And then you have to sit down for 8 hours and focus. It's really hard. It's really hard. Maybe if I start doing exercise before and then divide people into groups and make them be allowed to go. I read about that as well. One of my podcasts, wasn't of a guest. He used to get the children that were misbehaving in class. They were not sent to detention, which is you do nothing and you're in an empty room and you have to write all the time. No, they were sent to a room that can jump. Jump. They had to jump on a trampoline. I was like, yeah. And the students said, I need to go and jump. They would jump and they would come back. They were angels. And I thought, wow. I love it. Is there anything we have not touched that you would
just
like
a little
to talk
bit?
about?
You actually just touched on it a little bit, which is the hyperactivity piece. So we actually measure that. And with the neurofeedback, we are able to resolve that. So when we find it, there's something that we can do about it. It doesn't require medications or behavioral interventions. So we actually tackle that, and I talk about that in my book as well. And so the key really is in understanding what we're dealing with and knowing that there are solutions to all of this. And it doesn't necessarily involve medication or behavioral intervention plans. And kind of part two, what you were just sharing too about kiddos needing exercise. My mom taught second grade for 32 years in the same classroom. And so I kind of grew up understanding a lot of those behaviors in that classroom. And children need to be able to move around, and we have too much of a cookie cutter approach right now of everyone having to, as you say, sit still. Children can't. They need to be able to get up and move around. But even with that, some children have this kind of fine motor hyperactivity that defies description, but the behaviors are there. And for girls, I really want to touch on this because boys are typically the ones more clearly identified because of their behaviors. The girls are the ones who are quiet. So they will shrink back, they will pull back, they will withdraw, and then they're being passed along in school. And this is a huge disservice to them because their inability to focus is just as severe as boys. It just manifests differently. And we really have to be dialing in on these girls because they're struggling. And when they get into middle school and high school and drop out, we know that's no future. They lose their future because of this.
And they will lose also their confidence and think maybe I'm dumb, I can't do this, I can't do that. They end up being a job that maybe isn't as good as it could be. Not to put down the lower entry jobs, but they could do better, but they don't know how to do that. So in the last few minutes, 8 minutes before we finish, I just wonder if you have any special tips that a person can do today. I would assume the first one is do the test. Right?
Do the test. You can always do the assessment with us. It doesn't matter where you sit with that. We're not diagnosing. We're just understanding how the brain's working. And we just use that with computer and Zoom so we can help people wherever they are. The other is really understanding that there's a difference between the auditory and the visual processing. And I'd like to just give your listeners a little bit of a clue. Like on the auditory, what do you look for? And then on the visual, what do you look for? And so with the auditory processing, there's kind of a series of things you can observe. So first and foremost is how is this child or adult functioning in a noisy room? Are they able to concentrate, focus in, think of a classroom, think of a work environment? Someone's talking, do they drift off? Do they seem to just kind of lose track of what's going on? That's a sign of auditory processing. So that's a certain type of auditory processing. Do they feel like, they lose focus? They can't remember. So one of my questions to parents has always been, okay, in the morning, you're getting ready for school. You tell your child to go do, brush your teeth, get your backpack, tie your shoes and feed the dog. And you turn around and the only thing they're doing is playing with the dog. And that happens all the time with kids who have auditory processing problems because the only thing they heard was dog. It's like, oh, I can go play with the dog. It's like, well, you forgot the shoes, the teeth, the backpack, you forgot everything else, but that dog's happy this morning. So, you've got that going on. So it's really paying attention to the clues that are showing up. We have to stand back from, I'll say the word, kind of judging or thinking we understand what the behavior means because most of the time we do not. So we're going to focus on decoding the behavior. So you pull back and you observe. And then you take some notes and then you track it. You see, okay, when are things working and when are things not working? So if it's a quiet room and I give one task and it works, it's like, okay, jot that down because that's something that's working. It's a busy room. We've got 5 kids in the house, the dog, the cat, and everybody else is going on and nothing gets done when I talk. That's another clue. So noisy environments, not working. So just solely paying attention to what the behavioral signs really are without judging it. On the visual side, these signs are there, but people misunderstand what they are. So I talked a little bit about it before. So the backpack, you look in it and it looks like a tornado just went through it. You can't find anything. It's a mess. The room, you go in, you've asked them to make the bed. It looks like everything just blew up in this room all over again. They can never get it pulled together. So that's a visual organization challenge. That's a visual processing problem. Another thing that people don't necessarily recognize as visual processing is your child bumping into things, dropping things, tripping over things. There could be a visual processing here. And I want to be clear, this isn't about hearing and it isn't about vision. This is about processing. So how is the brain working with these signals from the environment? The other piece of this in smaller children in elementary school is, are they able to form their letters properly, or does it look just like they're writing all over, upside down and backwards and everywhere? Huge indicator in young children that there's a visual processing challenge. A lot of times that gets labeled dyslexia. I think that's a real thing. My mom uncovered that early on in her classrooms, and yet there's something we can do about that. Whereas when you get a label of dyslexia, there isn't always, again, it's that label piece. It's like, okay, we've got the label. Now what do we do? So it's really understanding these behaviors. Pull back from the reaction, take a breath, and chart what you're observing. What's working? When do things break down? For auditory processing, another piece to really recognize is that some people, if there's a computer going, whirring, there's a fan going, there's noise outside, there's someone talking, all of this information comes into some brains exactly the same level. So for them to be able to pull out a person speaking, impossible. They cannot do it. Everything's landing all at the same. And for me, I can tune out anything. And so I'm giving presentations. I tune out all the whirring motors in the room, the people in the rooms next door to me. I just did a couple of presentations, national ones. And then I bring this up and the other people go, oh yeah, I can't. I said, do you feel like you're getting training in 3 sessions right now? And I go, yes, because it sounds blending in from both rooms and in my room. And so I was like, well, don't you wish you could get the CEUs for all 3 of those sessions that you're listening to right now? So that's the key, is really paying attention to what this is. The checklist, the self-help little assessment on my website will get you going in some of the right direction on that. So hopefully that gives people some clues and help.
I'm so excited. I'm more excited than when we started, Connie. Thank you so much. I think it really gives hope. I just want to do your test. I want to get my daughter to do it, my husband. I want everyone to do the test so we can see. Maybe sometimes we are feeling a bit jittery because we're not processing this in the same moment. I had 2 children, so I just can shut out everything and just focus on what I'm doing and even do it in 3-4 languages at the same time. It's not a problem. I can do 3-4 things at the same time, but sometimes I do want to focus, and that's what I like. I do like music when I'm working because it kind of shuts off the whole world, and I'm drawing and everything disappears. But I do like to know that there is a hope, because when we tackle the root cause and we tackle these basic strategies that can help us to focus on what we want and to let go of what we don't want, I think that's really useful for education, emotional health, self-confidence, and then later on for job and even for relationships, because you might have a partner that literally talks, and you think, oh, I can't cope with that.
And that's a real thing. And I actually have saved marriages because, so I have. They admitted it after the fact. So
maybe we should have another episode.
This is a real thing. Yes, I really think that if marital counselors knew that this was going on, it would change up everything, because the exact example that you gave is a real thing, where some people, you've got a partner where one talks all the time and the other one just kind of needs to zone out and say stop. That's actually an auditory persistence that we can find in the assessment. And when it shows up, and I'll say to the person, so if someone's talking to you kind of on and on, do you just kind of want them to stop talking to you? And they go, oh, yes, I can't stand it when someone does that. And it's like, okay, well, here's your score. Here's what's happening. This is called auditory persistence. And what this means is you have a very tiny little bucket that gets filled up very, very quickly. And your partner probably has a very ginormous bucket. It never gets filled up. And there is the mix. And it's real. Yes, it's
That's
real.
another episode coming. We want to thank you so much, Connie, for being here today and tell us all about this. Looking forward to knowing more. Thank you guys for listening. Please click on all the links we're going to put in the description. Make sure you do the test and contact Connie for maybe a proper diagnosis if you're interested. So thank you all, and see you all next week. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye.